Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
My name is Jeff.
And we have a very special guest with us today. One of our listeners, Jacob, is joining us today. Welcome, Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Awesome.
Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just got back from Thanksgiving with the family, so you know, it went well because it was the first time the dog went on a long trip with us. So and it went really well actually. She did very good in the car, very good at when we were at the place, and very good on the car ride back. So I'm actually doing pretty good, relatively speaking. I'm in a good place.
Awesome. So yeah, listeners, we are recording this on the day after Thanksgiving. So, I'm sure all of us have a dangerously high level of turkey in our bloodstream.
Yes,
definitely.
So yeah, Jacob, how are you doing? Did you have a good Thanksgiving? How you doing? I guess.
Yeah, no, it was good. We had turkey and, all the usual stuff. Here in Hawaii, we do things a little bit different. So we had some pork and some Kalua pig and some pancit, if you know Filipino food. Yeah. I
don't, but it sounds good to me.
Pancit's amazing. It's just this noodle dish with, vegetables and usually chicken put in there. Jeff seems to know what it is.
I mean, it's just like, Hawaiian cuisine just all around is great, but just like when you get into like the pork and the, oh goodness.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing they can cook for sure. It's like we get Kalua pork, which it's where they stick the pig underground for 24 hours and they let it cook with the koa wood. But my wife was kind of broken when she got to the mainland and found out that, it's basically just pulled pork.
Sure.
But the flavor with the wood, it's a different thing.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like just pulled pork in general, I absolutely love, but in all different forms, like, the barbecue pulled pork is good, but then Skylar makes, I guess it's closer to like a taco season. She puts more like taco seasoning stuff in it, and like she does like a pulled pork for like we put in like little tacos and stuff, and that's really good.
Amazing.
I love some pulled pork.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So I had a bit of an ordeal to get Thanksgiving going this year.
Oh, right.
I'll try to keep it short because I've complained about it both to Jeff. I actually discussed it with Jacob on our Discord. Basically, I was making 2 turkeys for some reason, even though almost nobody was coming over this year. 1 turkey would have been way more than enough. But I decided I wanted to make 2 turkeys, and I wanted to smoke one of them, but it was too big. Everywhere that I looked for guidelines on how long to smoke it was basically like, don't do that, because it's just too big. And so I cut it up into 8 pieces, 2 legs, 2 breasts, 2 thighs, 2 wings. And then I was trying to find out, okay, I can smoke them in parts. That'll surely be faster. But how long do I smoke it for? Nobody knows. I even called the Butterball Turkey Helpline.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, we don't know. That's not really our specialty, so we just don't know how to do it. And then, so I just did something. I YOLO'd it. And then today, I was on Reddit, and, r/Ask Culinary is a subreddit that I'm a part of. And I noticed somebody on there was saying that they chose to fry a turkey, which I'm actually interested in doing someday. But they cut theirs up into parts, and they were like, nobody can seem to tell me how long to fry these parts for. And I'm like, man, high five. I know exactly what you're going through.
Right.
So for anybody who might be interested in smoking a turkey, what I did was I found a guide that showed how long to smoke just turkey breasts. In that case, I think they said 250 degrees for 5 hours. And so I just put all the parts for the whole turkey in there like that, and it was perfect. It was delicious.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
You think that it would be like the simple math of it, you just sort of like whatever the smallest piece is, or like whatever the biggest piece is, you kind of go off of that.
Maybe. I don't know. Nobody could tell me that, though.
Which I guess that's kind of technically what you did, because wouldn't the breast be like the biggest, at least the biggest like full chunk of meat?
Yeah, the breasts and the legs tend to be around the same amount of time. So
I feel like that's about what you did. Is just like, whatever you would cook the breast for, which is like that's the biggest chunk of meat. So go off of that. Maybe the smaller bits might end up a little bit more like overdone or dry or something. But
yeah. I don't know. Everything was delicious.
Yeah, and as if you were on the Reddit, I was asking, my wife's cousin runs a smoke. They do smoked meat and everything, and he basically said, when I told him Gabe would cut it in 8 pieces, he goes, "Don't do that." I was like, "It's too late. It's already done."
Well, that's what other people told me to do too. But then the things they told me to do, I can't do. Like they told me to spatchcock it, which is when you cut the spine out and then you just kind of unroll it so it's like flat. But I don't have room for that. My smoker isn't big enough, so I think I might be getting a new smoker so that I can in the future. We'll see. But it was frustrating because I was like, surely someone has done this before. But the only advice I could get was, don't do it. Do something else. Here, I'll tell you how to do this other thing instead.
This other thing that you don't have the space for. Yeah,
exactly. So, anyway, so that was my Thanksgiving. I guess we had way too much food. I almost made a pumpkin cheesecake and 2 pumpkin pies.
Ooh.
But at the last minute, I decided to make a pumpkin cheesecake and only 1 pumpkin pie.
Oh man.
We still have most of the pumpkin pie and about a quarter of the cheesecake left. So,
one of these days, I want to try your cheesecake, Gabe. I hear about it all the time now in the podcast.
I can send you the recipe. It's super easy.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, his pumpkin cheesecake is amazing. It's so good.
I will return the favor and send you our pumpkin crunch recipe so we can trade.
Yeah. We actually had a bonus episode on our Patreon that Jeff and I discussed some of our favorite recipes, and I put all the links to the recipes in the show notes for that. So if anyone happens to still be on our Patreon, they can go check that out. I'll just put the pumpkin cheesecake recipe in the show notes for this. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So, Jacob, I always mean to ask our guests how they got into tabletop gaming. So how did you get into D&D, any other tabletop games? How did you get into it?
Yeah, well, I guess it'd probably help if I introduced myself a little bit. I didn't do that earlier.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's my bad. I'm Jacob Cassens. I'm a teacher. I also do a lot of other things. I do a lot of copywriting, editing, and such like that. I work for a marketing company called Pixel Pop Marketing, doing the copywriting and editing. I also do ghostwriting and things like that for the board game industry and the RPG industry. A lot of that stuff comes with NDAs. It's always kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my side gig. I don't know any teachers that don't have a side gig, and I have a couple. But the editing one is a big one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the teachers need a side gig, but
right. Yeah. It's just kind of the way it is. But I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the rules editing and writing and things like that. I've done play testing for board games for quite a while as well. But as for getting into gaming in general, my whole life, my family has always been into games, board games and such. And when I was very young, about 7 or 8, Final Fantasy came out for the Nintendo. And man, that game blew me away because I'm not really into the action games where you have to, play and be fast and do all that stuff. I'd rather play a game where I can answer puzzles. And then I found out that there's Dungeons and Dragons shortly after I found this. And that was kind of the turning point. So I played Hero Quest, Dungeons and Dragons, Shadowrun, Tunnels and Trolls, all of these games that I could find at the time when I was 8 years old. And I played them since then. So that's going back over 30 years. I've been playing role-playing games, board games. As you can see behind me, the listeners can't see, but I've got a role-playing game shelf in the middle with board games, and I have 3 board game shelves in the other room, and there's another shelf over here with role-playing books and stuff on it. So I like to get into a lot of different genres of things. So.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that you were a listener of our show. Glad that you've been a patron of ours for a while as well. Mm-hmm. So glad to have you. I know you didn't get to take part in very much of it, but you joined shortly before the end of our monthly Roll20 game. So
yeah, that was fun.
I think you might have only been there for like 1 or 2 sessions, but glad you were at least able to join us for a little while.
Yeah, I got into one session. I couldn't make the other one due to timing, but it was fun. I loved the axolotl story, and just building the character. As a game master, usually I don't get to do that. So, sure. Jeff, I don't know if you heard. I made an axolotl. It was basically a bard warlock mix. It was a lot of fun to mess around with. Yeah, it was pretty
bard
cool.
Warlock, nice, very good.
Yeah. No, and we got to fight the giant he of many arms, Orgosh, I think he was, right? Kugrash, that's it. Yeah, Kugrash of so many arms.
Of all of the arms.
That was a very fun campaign. I wish we could have kept that going for longer, but unfortunately, it's just hasn't been an option. So
yeah. Well, I have to tell you guys too. I'm recently caught onto your stuff from. I listened to Crit Academy first a couple of years ago. I started, and then I caught about you guys and their stuff, and then I started listening to you, and I binged both of your shows to get caught up. Up to what was it, 6 months ago or whatever, I finally got caught up. So
Sure.
So it's been interesting watching all of that happen, and then all of a sudden now I'm rolling with it and keeping up episode to episode. So it's been a lot of fun.
Nice.
Cool.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'm glad that we've had you as a listener and as a supporter, and glad you've enjoyed what we've been putting out.
For sure.
So I guess you guys want to go ahead and get into this episode?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want the two of you to imagine that you are, the two of you are sneaking through the castle.
Okay.
You've heard that there's a hidden treasure in the castle that can only be accessed by a secret passageway. And so you've been given a chart. You paid a bunch of money on the black market for some chart of the guard schedules, so you know like where the patrols are going to be and so on. However, I do need the two of you to make a stealth check.
Okay.
I should have asked if you had dice on hand. Sorry.
Oh, I do.
Gabe.
Yeah.
Gabe, I rolled a natural 20. I did.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Sorry, my dice are across the room.
That's fine.
It looks like Jeff found it though. So.
Okay. So Jeff, you're going along and you notice that Jacob's character is going down the wrong hallway and you hear the sound of some guards. So you grab a curtain rod that's leaning against the wall and like you quickly reach out and like put it right in front of him and stop him, redirect him back towards where you're going.
Hey.
And you carefully sneak past some guards and then you come to an empty fireplace that's in a weird part of the castle. You never would have expected there to be a fireplace here. There's no wood in it or anything. But as you were told, you go over to one of the candlesticks up on top. You lean it to one side and you hear a grinding noise as a stone moves out of the way inside the fireplace. And as you sneak your way through, you of course are hit with little glints of light off of a giant pile of gold and diamonds and rubies. And you realize that the hidden treasure in this castle came from somewhere else. And do you know where that treasure came from?
Where did it come from, Gabe?
That treasure came from the dragon's hoard.
Oh no.
Guys, I just rolled the dice again. It was another 20.
Is this still the metal die you got?
Yeah, this is the metal die.
Awesome.
This die that Gabe got me has been amazing. Like I think at the very least in the times that I've rolled it for like the Dragon's Hoard intros, I think it's only run like single digits, like maybe once.
Yeah.
Hey.
Was that a Christmas present from last year or was that something else?
I think it was a Christmas present, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I went to Pandemonium. That's a store near us, and they were having a sale on a bunch of stuff, and so I figured, let me just pick up some cool dice and give them out to friends.
Oh, there's a 1. I just rolled 1.
Jeff!
Well, no, but you got it out of the way. It's clear.
Right.
Now.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So, Jacob, you had an item to bring in today. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Okay.
So just a little bit of intro to it. I was running a Princes of the Apocalypse game a while back with one of my D&D groups, and I had a cleric of Mask, which was really interesting because it's a thief, and he wanted to be kind of like this shady character, but be a cleric of Mask.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I come up with an item for this guy that's going to be relatable and useful? And so I came up with what I called the coin pouch of Mask, or it can be any world. It can be Bakab or Illidomara or whoever in your world it is. So I have it down as a wondrous item, and I have it down as rare. That might be flexible, but I think it fits pretty well. So it's a regular leather pouch with a drawstring, and when found, if you open it up and look inside, it has 1d4 plus 1 coins in it, and they're large. They're about the size of like a $50 US coin size. That's pretty big, but they wanted them to be a little bit different. On one side, they have Mask's symbol or whatever god you decide to use for your world, and on the other side is a dagger. And as an action, the owner can reach into the bag, at which point there will only be 1 coin. You can't pull out more than 1 coin at a time. Mm-hmm. And they flip it. If the coin lands on the side with the Mask symbol, the user can target a willing target within 20 feet and heal them for 2d4 plus 2 hit points. However, if the target accepts the healing, an amount of gold equal to the amount healed magically disappears from their inventory and cannot be prevented. If the recipient doesn't have enough gold to cover the cost, the coin is still consumed, but there is no effect. So if they're not carrying on their person enough coins for the heal, then they're not getting healed. If the result of the coin flip is the dagger, the user can choose a target within 20 feet, make a ranged throwing attack, adding their dexterity modifier to the attack roll. This is considered a magical attack for resistance or immunity effects. User is considered proficient, and the coin turns into a glittering dagger as soon as it leaves the user's hand, dealing 2d4 plus dex damage upon a successful hit. Upon rolling damage, an equivalent number of gold magically disappears from the user's inventory. This cannot be prevented. If the user does not have enough gold to cover the cost, no damage is dealt to the target, but the coin is lost and the visual effect still occurs. Once the pouch is empty, the owner can place gold in the pouch and leave it overnight. For every 5 gold placed in the pouch, 1 magical coin will appear the next morning, up to a maximum of 5 coins. All gold, even if more than 25 gold, magically disappears and is replaced with magical coins. The coin value is always rounded down when determining how many new coins appear, and it cannot be refilled until all coins have been used. So, yeah, it's kind of a niche thing. It's a little bit kind of weird, but I figured I had a cleric of mask. I wanted to give them something that was sort of showing the divinity of their god while also allowing them to still be kind of shady and stuff like that. So there's the coin pouch of mask.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. First off, I want to say that I love that you recharge the item by spending money.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting mechanic. And now I'm like, well, why don't more items let you do that? You know what I mean?
You know, I was actually inspired by, if you look at the lore of Mask, right? A lot of people will wear a little pouch that's meant to be stolen for Mask. It's kind of like an offering.
Oh, okay.
So
That's familiar,
I figured,
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like a play on that. It's just that as a cleric, right, he's offering his praise to Mask. Well, coins, it's very fitting for Mask. So.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's like there's the carrot pouch of gold that's meant to be stolen. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, I love that little bit of lore. It's good.
Yeah.
One thought I had was it would be funny if, like, when you healed somebody and they lose the money, like, you get the money, so you can kind of like force people to pay for your healing.
I didn't think of it like that. That's pretty good.
That would be interesting. Yeah, that might be a different item altogether. Actually.
Right. Yeah. It is a different item that, like, when you heal somebody, they can maybe it's like, they can get a bonus to the healing, but if they accept that bonus, they have to pay that bonus to you, and it's just automatically transferred to the pouch or something.
Sure.
I'm thinking of a bard doing that. That'd be great. They're just playing the music, and it's like, hey, you want to heal? Let's go.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Once more on the idea of, like, having to pay a resource in order to recharge your magic items, that is making me think of maybe it's beyond the scope of this item, but, like, imagine if there was a mechanic where in order to recharge one magic item, you had to temporarily give up another magic item. So, like, let's say you have a +1 sword and you have a wand of Cure Light Wounds. Your wand runs out of charges, so if you can, like, give up the power of your sword becomes non-magical for, like, 24 hours, and in exchange, you can transfer that over to the wand, and then the wand gets a few more charges or something.
I think that'd be really neat. I think you could play with attunement with that too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe,
pull attunement for 24 hours, and then to refill all the charges. That's a pretty heavy cost, right? So
sure, yeah.
But yeah, I think that'd be great. I mean, anything with costs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like I said, that's kind of beyond the scope of this item, but maybe that's something I'll keep in mind for when making new items for the future. Maybe I'll play around with that a bit.
Because, like, how many items is it you can be attuned to at once?
Like 3, I
Three.
think.
3.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could just be like, you can give up attunement to one of your items, and in return you can recharge up to 5 charges of a wand or something like that. So you give up for a day, you give up attunement. You'd have to, like, reattune to it or something.
Yeah.
The next day.
And that's pretty rough, right? If you got, like, magic armor or something.
Right. And it can even be like other people can give up their attunements to, like, recharge a recharge a wand or something like that. So, like, the party could be, like, pulling together their attunement or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, an artificer, even just something for an artificer to because that's one of their big things, right? Because they get those abilities later on that bounce off their number of attuned items. So
Yeah,
that'd be
they get,
interesting.
like, extra attuned items too, don't they? I think so.
they do.
They get 6, I think, at the end.
Jeez.
If you make it to level 20, but
Right.
Who does?
who does?
Yeah. So yeah, I just think this is a really cool item. I think that the theming is fantastic, and it's got cool, interesting mechanics that I've never seen anywhere else. So good job.
Thanks. Yeah, I like it. He liked it.
Right. All right. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to say about this item?
I do know there is in Zelda, or at least one of the Zelda games, there's like a set of armor that you can get that you don't take damage if you're wearing it as long as you have rupees.
Okay, yeah. I think that's, Twilight Princess, I think.
Yeah, the magic armor from Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
So like, like maybe even like something like an armor that gives you damage reduction. That whenever it reduces damage from an attack, it like you just bleed money
like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They like armor of the ring bearer or something like that. Something silly like that.
There's in the first Zelda game, you didn't buy arrows or you didn't find arrows. Whenever you shot an arrow, it just cost 1 rupee every time you shot an arrow.
Yeah, that was rough in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cool though.
Sure. I mean, in a game like D&D, I feel like because at a certain point, money basically becomes meaningless. At least at like lower amounts.
Well, but you still have to carry it.
So like, if you lost if you like fired a weapon, fired an arrow and it cost you a gold, it's like at a certain point, it's like whatever,
Right.
Well, there's a game. It's a roguelike. You might have played it, Gabe. I know you like these.
Enter the Gungeon?
No, well, Enter the Gungeon's great. No,
okay,
but this is one.
Go on.
Yeah, sorry. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's just called Rogue Legacy is actually what it's called.
Oh, okay. I have played that, yeah.
Yeah, well, you get these random... You go to these shrines and you get random blessings or curses. You never know what you're going to get until you click on it. Mm-hmm. One of them is the Curse of the Hedgehog, and obviously, you get... Every time you get hit, all these coins just go flying, and it's just so ridiculous trying to catch them all. It's like...
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to say there's another roguelike game, Enter the Gungeon, where one of the guns that you can get is called the microtransaction gun, and your ammo for the gun is just however much money you have. So whenever you fire, it costs you 1 unit of currency every time.
I haven't gotten that gun yet. That's great. I'll have to keep looking.
It's kind of funny. If you're playing on PC, one of the ways to unlock the gun is to buy this one DLC that came out, and then you just got it automatically. Whereas otherwise, you could unlock it just through the game's, the game's in-game currency.
Nice.
That's so meta. I love it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I really like this item. I think that being able to heal someone, but it costs a little bit of money, or to be able to hurt someone, but it costs some money. It's just a cool mechanic, and you don't see that anywhere else. So
yeah, well, thanks.
So yeah, really like it. So once again, that was the Coin Pouch of Mask submitted by Jacob here. Thank you very much, Jacob. Yeah. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Hoard, or questions for our main segment, or stories for the Funeral Pyre or Retirement Village, I think there is technically still time to do so. Maybe not, listeners. When you hear this, there may not be, but send it to us anyway. I'll enjoy hearing them. I'll enjoy reading them. How would they get those to us, Jeff?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord. And I mean, even when the show ends, still ask the questions, I guess. We could still take the time to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at least try.
Yeah.
It just won't be in podcast form, I guess.
Right. Watch, in 3 years, I release one episode, and it's just me all grizzled and exhausted, just being like, all right, so 2 years ago, I got a question. What page are the weapon rules on? Page 86. Thank you. See you next time. Anyway.
Well, at that point, too, we'll have the new books, so it won't even be the right page number.
Fair enough. So, Jacob, do you have an online presence you would like to tell our listeners to look for?
Yeah. You can find me on most social media as Jacob the GM, just all one word, JACOBTHEGM. I'm on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, Discord. It's a little bit different on Discord, but I'm on Discord all the time. I'm also as a teacher, if you are dealing with anything like that, I'm under Mr. Cassins, all written out, one word. So if you're looking at teacher stuff, you can find me online with that. Also for Pixel Pop Marketing, just pixelpopmarketing.com, and I'm Jacob at Pixel Pop Marketing. If you need to reach out, or if you just want to say hi and see what's up, those are all ways you can get me.
And yeah, I'll put all those in the show notes, so So if you need to, you can find those listed in text form on interpartyconflict.com.
Thanks.
All right. And we mentioned last episode that for our final episode, after episode 250, we're going to have an episode that's just kind of like an after party, I guess. So we're going to be taking listener submissions. If anybody wants to like send in some audio for us to listen to, you can shout somebody out. You can shout us out. You can tell us about a cool thing that you want us to look at or listen to or whatever. You can just tell a story. You can, tell us something to record for your gaming group, and we'll say it on air, and then you can cut out the audio in your own time and do whatever you want with it. Anything that anybody wants to submit for a final episode, we'd love to include all of it. So just
can we wish for more episodes?
You can wish for it, but like wishing for more wishes, it may not happen.
I just had to ask because I know people are going to ask.
Just send us anything that you want us to put on our final episode, and it'll probably make it on there. I plan on having a big grab bag of fun stuff on our final episode. So get those into us. Just email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. And then just one more quick thing. Check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy at critacademy.com. It's a great podcast where the great guys over there, they make new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. They recently finished a Kickstarter for Extraordinary Expeditions, which is going to be a book of like adventures and stuff. And I backed on a Kickstarter level where there's actually going to be some stuff in there that is heavily inspired by us. So keep an eye out for that when that comes out sometime next year. I'm really excited for it. Crit Academy. Also check out Brute Force and Ignorance. They're an actual play podcast. I forgot to mention this earlier, but thank you to Damien, who was a guest on our episode last week. Everybody go check out Adventures in Aurelia as well. And then the last two podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship, check out D&D Character Lab and the Kind GM podcast. So we got some great stuff for any kind of podcast listener. Go check it all out. Enough of all that. Let's get into some questions, Jeff.
All right, our first question comes from MRV73 on Discord, and they ask, what kind of things have people done to adapt 5e for kids?
Yeah, I feel like we've touched on running an RPG for kids in the past. I don't know if I had a ton to contribute then, but maybe as a group we can come up with some stuff this time.
Yeah.
Right.
Jacob, off the top, did you have any ideas that you have either experienced or that you have thought to use in the future?
Yeah, no, I've actually done this a bit. I've run pop culture clubs and D&D clubs. Some of the schools I've been at, there's already somebody there that has like Battleship and Monopoly, and they call that game club, so I couldn't call my club game club.
Yeah.
So I had to call it pop culture club, and then I just had everything in there. So I would run games, and I'd have other students, help students get started running games with 5e. And I do want to point out, though, Gabe, I believe you had a whole episode where you ranted about playing with kids.
Well, my rant was about people who judge others for playing with kids.
Right.
My point was that it's okay to play with kids. That in and of itself is not anything. There's nothing wrong with that. It's when you make it weird that it becomes weird.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
And as a teacher especially, we get things like this a lot where it's like, oh, well, who's in the club? And it's like, kids?
Kids are in the club.
Kids are in the club. But yeah, so basically with D&D 5e, the nice thing about it is that it's very approachable. Like you can get somebody a character sheet and give them a D20 and they're pretty much good to go, especially if you take the time to get it done early. So what I've seen happen is just like when I was a kid, right? Again, I started young. I was like 8 years old. So for me, I loved making characters. And this is back in basic D&D and AD&D editions, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a lot more complicated.
Right.
But for now, what kids can do is they can step in and go, those kids that are interested, you want to sort of harness them and use them as sort of like a co-DM for a while and give them that benefit of working with you to get them going. And usually it's not that they're not capable, it's that they're afraid because they've never done it, right? And it does take a lot as a DM to put yourself out there and take those risks. And Gabe, you've talked about it before on the show, no matter how many times you do it, you're still nervous every time. Even though you're with friends, doesn't matter.
Every time.
Yeah. I'm always like, oh, are they going to screw up what I got? Am I going to be okay? And so with kids, it's amplified, right? So with 5e, I think one of the great things about it is that, first of all, pretty much every book that's come out has some kind of beginning adventure, some kind of beginning module. Mm-hmm. You have all the modules on DM's Guild. But more importantly, there are websites and programs that allow you to simplify the rules. If you go to DM's Guild or Drive-Thru RPG, there's a bunch of supplements. I can't even name all of them. There's so many, but
I'll see if I can find some and put them in the show notes.
Yeah, and afterwards I can pull them up. I've got the modules. I just don't have them here.
Sure.
But yeah, it's one of the things with kids is that they just want to play a game. They don't want to necessarily make 30 characters. They don't want to sit there and break down all the rules of D&D. They want to go break things and have fun and do silly stuff, right?
Sure.
So what I found with D&D 5th edition is, again, pre-generated characters, kids, very good idea to start off. The other thing is simplify it by basically, at the very first time you play, you can focus on whatever you want to with your kids, but focus on, okay, this is your attack die. Make it the same for everybody, a D6, a D8, whatever, doesn't matter. Give them a die. And then when they get into combat, it's like, all right, you're going to cast this spell, roll an attack roll a D8. There's your damage. And what you'll find is the kids outside of that are able to create everything else on their own. It's all about the imagination, and those kids have it in droves. They have plenty of imagination.
They have not yet experienced a world that has crushed their spirit and their sense of wonder. Yeah,
exactly. No, that's exactly the thing, right? And with teaching, that's one of the hard things too, is to reach them and make sure that they haven't given up their freedom of willfulness, right? It's kind of something that they try to break out. Oh, you can't do that, right? But at the end of the day, the goal is to, with D&D and with everything really, is to get them to go, hey, I can do this, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's the big thing. Is the big hurdle with kids isn't that they don't want to do anything. It's just that, first of all, there's a lot of rules. No kid wants to read that big of a book unless they're a total nerd like we were when we were kids.
Right.
And they just want to go play a game and roll dice and hit stuff. So you don't need to do anything crazy. You just need to have fun. And the other thing is, let them win.
Okay.
You don't need to have some crazy intense challenge. You don't need to have a complex backstory. There's a bad guy. They're attacking the town. Go take care of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it. Stay focused. Keep it lined up. And honestly, the kids that have played with my game groups, they start after I get one DM going. They'll usually go teach everybody else how to DM, and it just spreads. And it's amazing. Just let them do their thing. Cool. So yeah, I think that's my experience with it.
Okay. So would you say that it's it might be, rather than sticking really closely to like, these are the rules, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, would it be better to pose more situations where you're asking the players, what do you see? What, like you open the door and there's a monster. Hey kid, what monster is it? Something like that.
I think that depends on your age group. So I've taught high school and middle school. I don't really work with elementary school kids so much. I have before, but more recently it's been high school and middle school. With high school kids, yes, absolutely. Okay. Middle school, because clubs tend to have a mix of between 6th and 8th grade students, I think it's easier if you just sort of describe what they see. Having miniatures is good, but just because at first they aren't going to know what to do. They're going to feel very lost because they're used to having things in front of them.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that would be my suggestion. I think with high school kids, though, for sure. When I taught at the high school and had the game club, those kids, they were playing D&D way more than I ever will. So
I haven't had a ton of experience playing with younger kids. I think the youngest kids I've ever run a game for were like middle school. And even then it was only a couple times. I remember one of the times was, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned on the show a long time ago, I was doing something not at my local library, but a different library a long time ago. And I was getting paid to come in and teach some kids how to play the game. And then like the other two DMs that were supposed to show up just flaked out. And so I had like 12 kids that I had to explain the game to. And again, I'm pretty sure they were all middle school age. And with them, I didn't really focus on creating like an adventure. It was more, I sort of set the scene and then a bunch of monsters show up. And then I kind of just went person by person, I had the roll initiative or whatever. I went person by person and I just kind of asked them, what do you want to do? And then I gave them a couple minutes of focus and I made them feel really cool. Then, okay, they're done. I move on to the next person. And then I gave everyone like one good solid turn of doing something cool. And then the encounter is over. Because by that point, 4 hours had passed because of how D&D is. So, so like, yeah, if I were doing like a more long-term game, I would probably have done it differently. I also wouldn't have, 12 kids in the group. But
I think you did as well as you could have given the circumstances. Sure. I mean, D&D is hard to lay out, and when you weren't expecting that big of a group too. But I mean, really, that's all you can do. And D&D is about, at the end of the day, the fun of everybody involved, like you guys say all the time. And if they're having fun rolling dice and killing monsters, then great. And that's usually how we all kind of get started in it, and then we realize the depth of role play later. And I think that's the thing too. Unless you're working with theater kids or something, it's and you know about that, Gabe. You're much more. But yeah, I think that you're right. I think you did as well as you could have in that situation. As somebody who deals with a lot of kids all the time, it's
Sure. So I was wondering about if there were just some ways that you could kind of dumb down the rules a little bit in order to make them a bit simpler for someone that's just, if you have 20 minutes to show someone what D&D is, someone who has no knowledge of the rules, a younger person, whatever. And one idea that popped into my head was, rather than dealing with, okay, you've got this modifier to this skill, this modifier to this skill, and so on. 5th edition's advantage might be just a quick little shortcut. You could give someone 2 dice and say, okay, pick a few things that your character is good at. And then they say, I want to be good at this, I want to be good at this and this. And then maybe ask them, what are some things your character is bad at? And then, okay, I'm bad at this, bad at this, bad at this. And then whenever they are encountering something that they are neither good nor bad at, have them roll a d20, just whatever the number says, that's whether they succeed or fail. If it's something that they're good at, have them roll both, and it's with advantage. So the higher of the two, that's what that flat number is what they go at. And then whichever things they're bad at, roll both, take disadvantage, and then so on. Again, not really D&D, but if you just needed to just quickly get someone into, here's what what rolling dice in order to succeed at a goal is like. Yeah. That's one way that you could do it without having to explain okay, well, so athletics is this, and then acrobatics is this, and then persuasion is this, and then bluff is this, or whatever. I'm mixing all my 3rd edition terms in. There's a lot of rules, and you don't want to, especially with little kids, would not want to bog down the game with all of the rules, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing at the end of the day is it's just like when I teach regular board games to people, right? Because I've done a lot of that for Upper Deck and stuff like that. When you teach new games to people, they don't want to know all of the intricate strategies to the game. They're just trying to understand how it works.
Sure.
And so you're not going to go through and go, well, if you had 3 more turns, you could do, they don't want to hear it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, though, like you said, it's just getting them started on the idea of rolling dice. And you could break it apart, and the next time if they play again, add in, the extra die rolls if you need to.
Sure.
But yeah, I also found one of the games, I had it here, I forgot. It's called No Thank You Evil by Monty Cook Games. It's actually pretty good. It does a good job of teaching kids how to basically play the game. You roll dice, and everything's based on D6s for this one, just to keep it simple. Okay. But your stats are tough, smart, awesome. It's pretty kid-oriented, because if you try to explain charisma to a kid, they're... It's gone. But yeah, No Thank You Evil, and the other one's called Hero Kids that I could think of off the top of my head.
Okay.
Which does the same thing. You have basic stats. They've simplified, your physical stats, your intelligence and wisdom into mental stats, and basically a will stat of some kind. And that way the kids just know, I'm doing something physical. I'm running. Okay, well, you're going to roll the running dice or whatever. Sure. So yeah, I think that that's the big thing.
Yeah, I actually think that that's something that's always neat to look at newer rules light RPGs for, because, for example, the Halloween, not this past Halloween, but the one before, we did an actual play where I ran a game of a horror RPG called Scream the Horror.
Right, that was good.
It's up on our, even for people who are not patrons, it went up this year on Halloween on our regular feed. And in that game, your stats are rather than having, okay, you got strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and then you've got your skills, you've got, athletics, you've got acrobatics, you've got deception, you've got persuasion, you've got whatever. And then, there's also your saving throws and so on. There are 6 stats. I just held up the number 3 for some reason. There are 6 stats in this game: sports, cool, read, escape, attack, and mend. And each of those, there's a 5-word description of what that is. And that's pretty much it. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons that I think that D&D isn't always the best game for someone who is not used to playing RPGs, because a system that theoretically, if it were just made from the ground up today, could be very simple like this, where you've got 6 stats and that's it. D&D is kind of beholden to having a lot of rules, and then a lot of sub-rules, and then a lot of interactions between rules, and so on and so on. So it does do the game a bit of a disservice when you are trying to teach it to someone who, may have a harder time following a lot of rules, like kids.
Well, and that goes back to teaching anything in general. And I found this teaching board games, teaching as a teacher, or whatever. We've been playing for a long time, right? We've been playing D&D for years. So every time a new edition of D&D comes out, it's not like I have to relearn the basic concept. I just have to go look at what changed. And that's, that advantage means that when I go and explain something, I'm taking for granted 30 years of knowledge that you may not have background in. So, roll a D20. What's a D20?
Right.
I would never even think about that, right? So I think that's the other thing where, in being a rules editor, for example, one of the things that I help with is basically stopping and going, okay, what if somebody's never rolled a die in their life? Like, how do we make this make sense? And so I think that as a teacher, when you're teaching a new game like that, you'd really have to go, okay, you guys don't know anything? Cool. Here's a dice. This die is called this. This die is called this. We're going to go attack somebody. Roll the die for attack. And that's how I introduced my son, actually, was that. I basically got some miniatures, got a map, put his guy out there, and I said, hey, there's a guy over there with a hood on. He looks scary. I'm going to attack him, and then that was it. And once he realized what he wanted to do, he was able to flesh it out from there. But again, kids have the imagination. We just need to get them rolling.
Sure. Jeff and I have a mutual friend, Steve, that has been on the show before, and I mentioned him many times. I was talking with him a few months ago, and he was telling me something that apparently his mom has in recent years started playing a tiny bit of video games. She's not getting into video games, but I think he got her to play Kingdom Hearts or something. And apparently she went through like half. I mean, I don't know if she actually got halfway through the game, but like she went quite a ways through the game before finding out that there was like a menu where you could like equip items and abilities. Because we as gamers just assume, we just know if you push the start button, that brings up the menu. You can probably, if it's not the start button, it's the triangle button or like the X button or whatever on the Xbox controller.
Right.
And you can equip stuff and then use those abilities. So like a lot of the time, that's the first thing I do in a game is I got to try to find the equip menu.
Right.
So she just didn't know that because she's never played games before. So that wasn't even on her mind. She just thought, okay, this stick moves, this button makes me jump, this button makes me attack. And then another thing that he was telling me was he had to explain to her when something poisons you, poison is a very slow decrease to your health. It's damage over time. We just know that in D&D, right. Generally speaking, that's a lot of the time that's what poison does. In video games, that's always what every poison in every game is. You take a little bit of damage every few seconds. That's just understood. That's just what poison means in games.
Right.
Yep.
That's not what poison is in real life. I mean, like poison does a ton of things in real life, but someone who's never had that vocabulary is not going to play a video game and hear the word poison and think, oh, okay, my health is slow. No, they're going to be like, oh, poison, where's the antidote? Where's the antitoxin? I have to find it. So there are just these things that we as gamers who have been playing for years and years, we just assume these things. So that is a consideration when you're playing with someone who has never had this experience before. So you couldn't just tell, a 7 or 8 year old playing the game for the first time. You couldn't just be like, oh, you're taking some poison damage. Right. They might know what that means. They might not. You gotta then explain what that does mean, or there is the risk that it's just going to go completely over their head, and not just because they're short.
Well, and you bring up a good point, because the other thing with that is all the monsters in D&D, some of them are based on myth, but most of them are pretty new. So when you start talking about, I don't know, just say with a Gorgon, right? The bull.
Oh, sure.
They're going to look at you like, what's a Gorgon? And you're going to be like, well, technically it's a Medusa, but we're not talking about Medusa. We're talking about this bull. And they're going to be like, wait, I don't know what you're talking about.
Jeff, did you have anything about how to adapt 5e for kids?
I mean, nothing that's going to add anything of any good substance. No, you guys did a really good job. And I mean, like, we have an actual teacher in our midst, so who has experience, dealing with children. Like, I just got done with, being in a house with my cousins, and not my cousins, my nieces. I've been calling them cousins all weekend because they're my dog's cousins.
Okay.
Because my dog is my baby. I love her so much.
Okay.
Sorry. But I always like to think of myself like, yeah, I'm probably really good with children because like I can understand where they're coming from because like I hate authority and rules and things like that. And then I get around kids and I'm like, oh, dang it, kids. Like I become a crotchety old man when kids are around, but when they're not around, I'm like, yeah, I'm totally on their side. I'm one of them. So yeah, like I like, you know, I always say like try to remember like try to treat kids as like they're humans because they are. Like
that's huge.
Treat kids with respect, like, because as easy as it is to dismiss them, like they're people, they have feelings, they're gonna remember things, they're gonna resent you, they're gonna, you know, like, and like they'll be more vocal about it too. So don't be mean to them. Otherwise they'll tell everybody.
Just like no, just as long as you don't get caught calling them like being mean to them, you're all right.
Right, you know. Yeah, but seriously, but like, you know, treat them like people because that's what they are. They're just smaller, dumber people, but they're not dumb because they're, you know,
they're ignorant in the way that you're ignorant when you don't know things.
Exactly. Like like I, you know, like, and I've been trying to teach myself this, that like there really aren't dumb and smart people. There are curious and incurious people. You know, like.
Yep.
And it all depends on like the subject too, because it's like I'm a complete idiot on some things and I'm fairly smart on others, and so like kids just like haven't gone through all the things that they've decided that they're curious about and incurious about. So like, I don't know. I'm sort of
well said, Jeff. I mean, you should become a teacher with that kind of philosophy. You've got it nailed down.
There you go. I did originally go to college to not originally, but one of my attempts at higher learning was to become a teacher.
Oh,
there you go.
You might say, in many ways, we were all kids once. both literally and figuratively. All of us had a time when we were learning the game for the first time.
Yeah,
sure.
And I'm sure I asked a lot of stupid questions. So, so somebody else is allowed to ask me some stupid questions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, Jeff, you made a good point. The fact that not just that they're people, but that questions aren't stupid in this case, because again, we're bringing in all this stuff with us, and for those kids to go, oh, what's an orc? You can't be like, you an idiot? You don't know what an orc is? No,
right.
You've never seen Lord of the Rings, or you know, you've never played World of Warcraft, or
I'm still not convinced I know what an orc is.
It keeps changing.
Sometimes they're pigs. Sometimes they're not pigs.
Yes. So, yeah, that's true. It's like, so yeah, sometimes they're like pig-like. I don't know. Like the like moblins in Zelda.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's like, and there's moblins and bokoblins. Have there always been that difference, or when did the bokoblin become a thing?
No, I think that's a new thing.
Sure.
I'll die on that hill.
One more thing that just occurred to me that you can use to help adapt 5e for kids: find out what pop culture the kids are into, and then find analogs in D&D. If they really like the Legend of Korra, the monk, that's kind of like the martial artists in this cartoon that you like. And stuff like that. Find things that they like, because I guarantee you every D&D archetype is in some way represented in whatever shows and games and such the kids are already playing. So. And
most kids today are into anime, so there's plenty of places to pull those similarities from.
See, I have trouble relating to my nieces because like they don't have like a favorite show. They just watch all of YouTube, and it's kids YouTube, and it's awful.
Sorry, Jeff, are we talking about your dog's cousin nieces or the other nieces?
My nieces, who are my dog's cousins, because the dog is my child. I am dog. Hi. No, I just like, it's like my youngest niece, like, or not my youngest niece, because my sister had a baby recently.
Nothing you're saying is accurate, Jeff.
I keep. So like they don't have like a favorite show, like they know like movies that they like, like Frozen or whatever. It's like, so I guess you could like maybe equate that, like you can be a wizard and have like ice powers like Elsa in Frozen or something.
Please, Jeff, she would be a sorcerer.
Yes, I know, Gabe, shut up, whatever.
Sorry. I just had to be that guy.
No, you're right. But it's simple terms. In simple terms for a child, it's like you could wield magic like Elsa in Frozen. But lately, it's just like they just watch like YouTube video and then whatever's next on the algorithm they watch, and so it's just like unboxing videos and things like that. It's
Jeff,
like,
just let it go.
Gotcha.
But I want them to be into things that I can turn into nerd stuff. Like I need my I need my sister's offspring to be nerds. just so I could be like, see what it's like.
Uncle Jeff, I don't want to go to the game store. You're gonna come in here and you're gonna buy some dice and you're gonna like
I'm gonna give you a set of dice and you're gonna like it. I'll get you the ones that look like ice from from that stupid Disney thing you like.
Well, you know what they have now, Jeff? They have My Little Pony D&D sets with a die in it and everything. You may end up playing.
There you go. I was gonna say, get them one of those metal D20s that I got you, because then they'll get 20s all the time.
Right, they'll just always be winning, and then it's like, and then they'll go through life thinking it's that easy.
Yeah.
Oh, the lies.
All right, our next question comes from Fingers Fate on email, and they ask, what do you think of role-playing a world or game session without the racism that seems cooked into the very crust of D&D?
Yeah, so like I think we had an episode a long time ago that was about how do you get across to your players that an evil race isn't necessarily the bad guy or something.
Yeah.
This is a slightly different idea. This is like, how do you just kind of create a world where those preconceived notions either don't exist or like have to be proven before they can be assumed, I guess.
Right. And I do think not too long ago we sort of touched on, because like D&D, I know, or like Wizards of the Coast wanted to like move away from like more racial differences,
right.
In the like the player races and stuff.
Yeah.
Like all orcs are stupid kind of thing. It's like, well,
right.
It
is hard. It's an uphill battle, because so much, kind of like how just what orcs are because of all the media that they've been in. You also know that orcs are savages. They're brutish savages because all of the media that has portrayed them ever portrays them as brute savages.
Right. And because even like through Tolkien and stuff like that, like they, there was some, at the very least, loose, like he was loosely basing it off of like racist, ideas on, other people, like, and maybe it might not have been explicitly racist intended, but it is a racist view of other cultures that have created these sort of ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
I've actually heard, I don't know if this is accurate or not. Maybe this was just something somebody made up in order to, defend JR or Tolkien or something. But what I've heard is that technically orcs were meant to be a metaphor for like the German Blitzkrieg, like just because it was during World War II, if I'm not mistaken, or like right around World War II. And so Tolkien was physically dealing with just the endless armies of Nazis that would show up and, just destroy everything on their path. That being said, there are a lot of people who apply the concept of orcs as a metaphor for other races, for other things, and so on.
Right.
So it can be problematic.
And he definitely could be taking it from, several different sources. And and like, I can't say that I'm super familiar with like the text for, like I saw the movies, like I never like I read the books, but like they did not grab me as much as the movie did, because I'm more of a,
That hurts my soul, Jeff.
Sorry. I was never a attentive reader, but so like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know exactly what JR's his intentions were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you watched the movie Tolkien. It came out a little while ago.
No.
A couple of years. It's actually really good. It does a lot to sort of explain his process of writing and going through it and everything, the languages, the orcs. It's got this really powerful scene where he's actually in World War I, where he participated. and he's in the trench, and he's sort of having this flashback. But in the flashback, instead of the soldiers, it was basically an orc on a wolf. It's like this is the image that he's getting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This everything's so savage, right? And it's not that he's saying that people in general are savage. He's saying that war is savage.
Sure.
And I think that that's the thing with the orcs is they're not necessarily savage. They're just in a war. They're in a state of being driven by Sauron to destroy all these things. And but yeah, going back to the question, racism is really tough because, and this is something I've worked with as a teacher. My master's degree is actually in multicultural education. So, cool. But one of the things with this that's really important is that I think that to try to get rid of racism in the D&D world is probably not the best solution, because one of the things we do as people is we try to, we call it whitewashing, right? And it's in this case it could be literal, but it's not necessarily literal. Yeah. But you don't want to pretend like these things don't exist, because they exist and they're going to exist. And when you pretend they don't exist, you're eliminating the conversation, and that is where the people who want to maintain the status quo maintain power. Okay. So I think like Eberron, and Keith Baker has talked about this in some of his blogs and stuff, but in Eberron, I think it's as close as you're going to get, because there are orcs, there are goblins, there are dragonborn, there are everything out there, and they're just kind of part of the world. Now, there are groups of them that get isolated and ostracized, but just because that guy's an orc doesn't mean he's not one of those Takan orcs, he's one of these other orcs from the Demon Wastes or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's more about where you're from, and that goes into, I think, instead of focusing on race, you can focus on nationalism, again, like Eberron does. Okay. Because in Eberron, your core language and your core culture isn't what race you are. It's wherever you happen to be from. So, that's true. If you're from Sharn or Breland or whatever, it's, I speak for Breland. Breland needs to maintain control. You're a dwarf. That's so.
Right. Like a huge part of Eberron is the refugees from Sire, this country that was blown up. Right. And every time I've read about, people being prejudiced against the refugees, it doesn't even mention what race they are. Maybe sometimes it does, but it's not about that they're an orc or that they're an elf or a dwarf or whatever. It's that they're from this country that people either don't like, or they think got what they deserved, or they're just these people that they're all suffering, and so that's why they're doing what they're doing, I guess. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Eberron did really well. I think Forgotten Realms has a lot more of the tropes. If you go into, especially in Northern Forgotten, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the lore, but Northern Forgotten Realms like Icewind Dale, it's pretty much just constantly being bombarded by orcs. And there's not a distinction in Forgotten Realms like, it's these orcs. No. It's just the orcs are attacking. Yeah. So it's pretty...
It's very like Warhammer 40K version of orcs, where it's just like there is the orcs and they are going to fight, and that's just all they do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and 40K orcs are fascinating because they basically have this sort of tie to chaos where they can just sort of think something and it works.
Yes, it's just. I love 40K orcs. They're some of my favorite. They're some of my favorite versions of orcs. Yeah.
It's so great. It's like, how do you have a gigantic mech that works? I don't know. I believed it did, and there it is.
I built it.
Because the 40K orcs have like the closest like connection to like the psychic realm or whatever it's called, the war. Yeah. So they are the most like psychically powerful race, but they don't really know it. Like they just believe in something and it happens, and it happens because they have such a deep connection to the psychic abilities of the universe or whatever.
Yeah.
I love them so much. They're ridiculous.
Well, and I was going to say, taking that back to the story, I think that's what we look at in our world, right? Look at these games. All these games are delineated by race, and it's Warhammer 40K. It's not like this is a culture. It's literally the humans in 40K hate all the aliens. They call them Xenos, and they just want to kill them all, right?
Sure.
And that's part of the conversation, but their world is intentionally meant to be dark and not good. So when you look at that, it's not meant to be a model of what you should be. Whereas in D&D, it's different because that model, we're the heroes, right? We should be above these things. And but I think in D&D, getting back to the question where it says role-playing game sessions without the racism, I think that you could do this by playing a game where everybody's one race, right? They're humans or dwarves or whatever. And just have them play that race and not run into anybody else for a while and watch what the players do. And it could be a good way to have a conversation. But at the same time, I think that most people, and this is just me being blunt, most people don't have the actual intuitive sensitivity to race to actually do that maturely. Because it's going to turn silly at some point, and then you're going to cross a line. But I think that's something to look at yourself with if you're doing that. But the other way of this is just having everybody be racist. In my games, I don't try to make the races stand out for anything, really, unless it's important to a plot point. And it's not because I'm trying to be better than anybody else. It's just that I don't want to remember all the races and stuff. It gets really hard as a DM to, that Johnny over there is the dwarf barmaid, but Junie over there is a human barmaid. And I don't want to remember all that. So it's a barmaid. It's a whatever. Focus on the fish.
Sure.
But I think that's another way you can do it, is just have it not be a thing. And Eberron gives you a good place to start, I think, for that. Ravnica is another setting. I was just telling Gabe earlier, I was reading that one. Which guild you belong to matters more than what your race is. Like, it's irrelevant. And Jeff, you play Magic, so you see that a lot in the different cards. You can have anybody from anywhere being in pretty much any guild. So,
yeah. So, what you just said, Jacob, makes me think that like when I'm running a game and I do mention, I feel like I don't mention an NPC's race often. When I do, I'm just doing it as a shorthand instead of having to describe what they look like.
Right.
I'm just using that as a shorthand for like, oh, so it's a dwarf, so they're short, they're stocky, they probably got hair all over.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily trying to make it about their race. It's just if I can say what they look like in one word as opposed to in like 10 words.
Yeah.
But whether that is the best approach or not, hey, that could be problematic in ways. If anybody thinks that it is, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear a better way to do it, I guess.
And I think that's the problem, right? Even just going around, when you look at like all the jokes about police sketches and stuff, right? It's like, Peter Griffin did one on Family Guy one time. It was like he's asking the person what they look like, and he ended up just drawing like a very racist, stereotypical Asian person on his sheet. Family Guy was lampooning the idea that one of the first questions they ask you is, what did they look like? And then you don't want to say, they were Asian, or they were black, or they were white, or whatever.
Sure.
And the thing is, at the end of the day, that's who we are, right? I'm white. I'm white male. I think there's a point where you can cross a boundary of being too sensitive about it, but that's me saying this from a privileged position.
Sure.
But I think on the other hand, if you don't acknowledge it and you don't use it as part of your description, you're taking out something that actually makes us unique at the same time, right? We're all different. And I think, like, I'm Basque. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's a specific culture of people. But most people don't know who we are. So most of the time they're like, you're white. But I'm like, actually, I'm Basque, and my country has been controlled since ancient Rome. They've been fighting for their freedom over there for thousands of years. But that's something that, when you look at somebody, you never know, right? You never know what's going on in their background. You never know what's going on. But if you say, you know what, they had Asian features. Okay, there are Asian features. They had, they had a darker skin tone. Okay, because I don't know if, they might be, like, my wife is Filipino, and some of her family is very dark skinned. If you saw them from the side or back, someone might go, that person was black. And it's like, all right, well, now you've basically made a broad generalization without taking the time to look for other features that could have been more more valuable. But in D&D, like you said, because we're painting a picture with words, and if you look at authors as well, there's not really much better way to do it. We have to sort of acknowledge those things right off the bat, because that's how we see it. And again, I don't know if there's a right answer either. As a historian, my undergraduate degree is in history. I know that when I was writing my one of my theses, it was about Native Americans, and I had a hard time because I had to use the term Indian a lot, and I was like, "Is this okay to use?"
Sure, yeah.
And I'm consulting people and talking to people, Native American scholars, and they go, "You're talking about a historical period of time. It's okay to use it."
Right.
And but that scholar says it's okay, but I might run into somebody who says, "No, that's not." You're never going to make everybody happy at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah.
What you've been saying, I think, really explains why there was such a push with starting with 4th edition, but then also with like 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition and so on, to get rid of the negative modifiers, negative ability score modifiers. Yeah. I never really put much thought into it until just now when we're talking. By taking away the negatives, what you're doing is you're saying it's not that some of us are worse at things than others. You're just saying we all have something to contribute. We all have something that makes us valuable to society, to each other. And it is, I'm going to take a hard stance here and say that it is better to focus on the good than to focus on the bad. I know that's such a controversial opinion, but
hate mail's
when
coming.
you think of it like that, because I've heard lots of people say they don't. Oh, I don't like how they're getting rid of all the negative modifiers or whatever. But like, if you look at it as we're all playing heroes, so what are the things that your hero is really good at?
Yep.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and I think that what's really cool too, I don't know if you read all the updates, but they're getting rid of size categories, right? They're saying generally whatever, but could be small, medium, not large for most races, but some can, like Dragonborn and stuff. But so they've done that for a couple of them. They did that in Tasha's. They did that for something. I don't remember which one in Tasha's. But in the new Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the Harengon can be either small or medium. It's your choice. The fairies. Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense, right? Because there are really tall dwarves. We have to imagine there are, right? There have to be. And so when you think about what someone could look like, I think that it helps us get out of that homogenous view of people. And people, I mean all peoples. And gives you an understanding that just like any person can be different, that any person amongst those people can be different, right? And I think if you go back to D&D or even World of Warcraft, right? You look at the orc males, they're these big buff dudes walking around, and the orc females are scrawny. But it's like, what? No. right. You know? So it covers a lot of boundaries. But yeah, I think that I think the big thing is, at the end of the day, so long as your intent is good and you're being mature about it and you're not allowing racial issues to cause concern at the table, I think that's the best you can do. You know, we're only people. We're only human, and it'll probably be generations before we get past this, you know, as a culture. But I think we've come a long way, and I think that to deny that is taking away the growth that we've found. And I mean, just the fact that my wife is Filipino, right? Like, there's a time and place where that wouldn't have been okay, you know, in our country. So I think we've come a long way, and I think that to say that we haven't is hurtful to that growth, but also we still have a long way to go, and I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah. So really, the answer to the question is play Eberron.
Yeah, absolutely. I am 100% behind that.
Yeah,
or Ravnica. Play Ravnica or Eberron.
There you go.
Eberron's great. Eberron's great. Got Warforged.
You know, when it came out, I remember they did the contest, and I was just like, when I saw the art, you didn't tell you anything. You know, it was just a robot, basically. I was like, why do we have robots in D&D? I was like, this is stupid. But then when it came out, I read it. I was like, this is amazing. It's so good. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm still
hate on the robots, whatever.
Well, I just, you know, at the time I was young, and you know how you're much more convinced that you're right when you're young because you haven't experienced the world. Right. I'm like, no, D&D is swords and wizards and clerics, and what is this new class? That's stupid. Get rid of it. But you know, and as you get older, you learn to see everything's gray, not black and white. And but no, once you get into Eberron, it's not that robots are in there. It's just that Keith Baker and the team did such a good job of making everything fit and have a purpose. And I think that that's where we run into a lot of problems with D&D. It's like, well, what are orcs going to be if they're not just the bad guys? Like people, you know? It's like,
oh no, what a strange and unusual concept.
Right, and there's plenty of beasts and other things out there for you to attack and deal with and so on. So if it's a humanoid race, then make it a humanoid race. Make it have all the good and the bad. And I think part of the problem with that is that humans have always been so bland until recent editions. I think that they've done a good job of making them less bland. So,
all right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for this week. But we do still have our social media questions. Our last social media question was, your character has to help you move. Are they going to help you, hinder you, or something else entirely? Jacob, did you have a response to this question?
Yeah, I thought about using my character from your Roll20 game, but I've been playing in a Star Wars RPG game, and I have a character named Azuli who's a Togruta. And Togruta, the whole world is built on like art, and everybody's an artist of some kind, just because that's their culture, not because they are all like that. But and so I just see my character stopping, going, "Oh, are you really going to put that there?" And judging me every step of the way, like as I put it there. He's like, "This really would look better in the other room, you know." And I just see him like attacking my decisions of placement. They would help me, but they would also get in the way of finishing the job quickly. Sure.
But once you were done, your feng shui would be amazing.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, do you recall if you had an answer?
Yeah, I don't think he'd be like thrilled about it, but Krill is lizard folk, so probably doesn't really quite understand the like the purpose of a lot of like the different types pieces of furniture and stuff like that. But he's just like,
Sure.
But he has, like, decent enough strength score, can climb, so maybe he can like be, help carry stuff upstairs easier. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he'd be helpful. I just don't think he'd be like thrilled to do it.
Sure.
He's the guy who can climb up the rail and get behind the couch after you've pushed it up halfway.
Right. You've wedged it and you're like, oh man. Yeah.
And my character in that same campaign is a half-orc paladin, and she's very strong, so she would help in carrying things. However, she tends to almost die basically all the time, so
she's a liability.
I have a feeling something bad would happen.
The couch would fall on her. And,
pretty much, yeah. So yeah, over on Facebook, Jake F says, I think it's pronounced Howcat or Howacat, would cast Bless on me and sit in the cleanest corner of the apartment making wry, backhanded comments on my performance. If I did a good job, he would order lunch for both of us with my credit card. Fair enough. Darren W. says, knowing the characters I have, Malik will attempt to help, but with his luck, he will break more stuff than move. John, being a former soldier, would set a regimented order until someone gave him ale and sat him in a corner. Nefriana, being a high elf sorcerer, would probably put everything in a portable hole or several bags of holding and just make life difficult. My wife's rogues would just steal it all and leave me with naught. There you go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of different characters with lots of different approaches. Over on Reddit, Alistar the Minotaur says, of the 3 characters I'm currently playing, Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho would easily be the most helpful, as he's in incredible shape and would take carrying most of furniture individually as a challenge.
Hold on, I need a second after that.
That was a name.
Oof, I could be wrong, but I think part of that is a reference to the movie Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
President Camacho. And Echo X9, my android, would also help, ensuring that everything was stacked in the most structurally stable way possible. Wenzel, the inconvenience, would pour soapy dishwater all over the floor and then cackle manically when people slipped. We've all had characters like that, I think.
Yeah.
Over on Twitter, Storytime Professional, this is Dustin, says, Professor von Guggenheim would disassemble and, quote-unquote, upgrade my stuff. I don't think my stuff is going to make it intact. That was his character from our previous Roll20 game, where he would make gadgets that were intended to do one thing but ended up being weapons.
Sure.
Like a sugar dispenser that was his ranged weapon.
Pez.
Yeah.
Offensive Pez.
Over on Discord, Debrasaur says, so I invited my character over to help me move, but I somehow ended up helping her move into my new house. What just happened?
Where are my things?
Collins B says, Kongu has no useful force powers for moving, and Tantawan devolved into a 4-hour diatribe about what constitutes a table.
Or a hot dog.
So I recently, the other day, I re-listened to our Dinner Party Conflict episode. I don't remember what made me think of that, but just I wanted to listen to that. So I went back and I listened to that. That is, I'm going to strongly say that is one of the best episodes we've ever made.
It's the one that's not even about
There's a point where Jeff said a hot dog is closer to a salad than a sandwich. And like, I got nothing.
That? That's some of the best audio ever.
Amazing. I gotta go. I gotta go clip that audio. Okay, awesome.
That should be your ringtone, Jeff.
Hot dog is closer to a salad than a sandwich.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Good job, past me.
Good job, past Jeff, yes. Stiltskin Koopa 84 says, Itai of the Lojax Mountains could probably move everything without a partner, but he'd have trouble squeezing through my human-sized doors, and he'd risk crushing anything fragile enough for a Goliath's hands to crush on accident.
So everything.
Yeah. 2 more. Wolfpack Nate says, for my character, we'll go with Alvard since he was in the IPC campaign, and I have like 40 so far on D&D Beyond. He'd definitely be a huge help being a Goliath. And Floofy Shoob says, my character's from a superhero game, so yeah, easiest move ever. Fair enough. So that was our last social media question. Thank you, everybody who wrote in. Our next social media question is, gaming wise, what is something you are thankful for this year? Jacob, what do you got?
Well, I mean, I'm going to give the answer for the show that you paid me to do and say InterPartyConflict, but
okay, thank you. Here's your $20. I'll just slide that through the webcam.
No, but really, I think I'm grateful for the ability that we have to communicate like this. This past year, over the internet, through Discord, podcasts, all of that stuff. Because when I was growing up in the '80s, if this happened then, I would not have been able to play D&D. I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And I've been able to basically keep running D&D games pretty much nonstop through the pandemic and lockdown. Hawaii's got more severe lockdowns than a lot of places still.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're still, mandated small groups and masks and stuff like that everywhere.
Meanwhile, Michigan has the worst numbers in the entire country, and we have nothing.
Yeah. My friend just had his buddies come over. He grew up in close to Flint. I can't remember the town he grew up in. It's a small town. Sure. But his buddies just came from Michigan, and they came to Vegas. And Vegas is about half and half. And he said that they came in and they're like, "Oh, we have to wear masks?" It was like, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it classy, Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh,
but yeah. And I think that over the past year, though, the ability to connect online has been the big thing. Getting digital content for games has been amazing. Roll20, Foundry, all of these new tools. But yeah, having a community that has been built over podcasts, a digital platform to communicate and keep growing the gaming industry, not industry so much as community.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. And so IPC is part of that, obviously. And if you guys aren't on the InterParty Discord, get on there. It's great.
Yes.
Come hang out. But yeah, just IPC, Crit Academy, all the podcasts I've been listening to, and all the digital content I would say I'm grateful for with gaming.
Cool. Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off of that just because, it is really nice to be able to like still be in contact with everybody, and like I will also say I'm thankful for Gabe and my friends and my other friends Steve and Jay, and how we're able to like get together once a month online and play some tabletop games, and we would always joke in our time on this podcast, we've always joked at like how we never play the game. We talk about it every week, but we can't find to actually sit down and play it. And like, this past year, we've been making steps to playing more often, and like we play at least once a month. I'm playing a game, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I remember when we were, we'd been out of high school for a couple of years. We played D&D in person every week, basically every week.
Yeah.
And then we all kind of started moving apart. I know like Steve moved away, and then like Jay moved away, and then I moved away. And we had tried in the early days of like internet role-playing games, we had tried to set up some sort of like way that we could play remotely, but at that time there just wasn't a way to do it. And so it ultimately went nowhere. And yeah, this year, the four of us, for the first time, have actually been able to get a consistent game, and it's fantastic. I think it's so cool. I like you, Jeff. I'm so thankful for that. Thankful that it's possible. Other people have been doing it for years. It's so cool that I'm thankful that more people have been getting into the hobby as a result. So I'm definitely thankful for that. But of course, I'm also going to get sappy, and I'm going to say that I'm so thankful for this podcast and for the community that has risen up around it. I'm thankful for Jacob for being a listener, for being a supporter, for being a guest host, and of course, I'm super thankful for Jeff. Jeff has been my wonderful co-host for the last almost 5 years. And
sorry.
And I'm so thankful for that. And I don't know if either of us knew what we were getting ourselves into 5 years ago when we started, but it's been a wild ride, and I'm super thankful for that. So thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
I want to point out too, I think that I know, Gabe, you're kind of like the face of the podcast, but Jeff, I want to say like you guys both are so important to this podcast. Like it's the team of you that makes this so amazing.
Well, good. Yeah. I've said to Jeff, like, I consider us equals in every way. I mean, sure, I do a lot more like the editing and stuff, but like if I didn't want to, I'm sure Jeff would. I do it because I want to. I do it because I tend to micromanage stuff. So that's on me.
And like you hold yourself in such high standards, like, that, I would feel nervous about
Oh, he doesn't hold you in high standards, Jeff. Just himself.
I mean, but there you go.
But I hold myself to high standards as well, and and then there's also the added the added pressure of well, I don't want to let Gabe down. I wouldn't want to let Gabe down. Who'd want to do that?
Is this where we see the dark side of Gabe when you turn in something, you missed an audio cue or something? And...
the reason Jeff doesn't want to disappoint me is because he knows what happens.
Are you going to pull a misery thing, put the block between the ankles? And,
oh, no. Oh, God.
that is
this
still...
got dark real fast. I'm sorry, everybody.
Whenever I think of someone getting upset with someone for their creative work, I think of misery. It just pops into my head. It's just,
Now we know why the podcast is ending.
Oh goodness. All right. On that note, I'm super thankful for all of our listeners, all the people who have been willing to pay us money for several of the last 5 years. It's such a humbling thing, and it's so awesome that people like what we do so much. So thank you, listener, for being here. So I think that'll do it for our questions for today. But before we close out, let's wind down a little bit. Let's relax. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember those who have come before us, who have given their lives that we may have a better world to live in, as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. So Jacob, you have a funeral pyre story for us today?
Yeah, so this is going to take us back to 1992, and there were a lot of conventions, D&D conventions at the time. AD&D was the big game, of course, first edition. Second edition had just come out, but it was still kind of transitioning. People weren't fully transitioned over. So I'm at this convention, and there were a bunch of events. 2 events. You're going to think that the big melee where you get to run around and fight people, and every person you kill, you get $2 is where this is going to come from.
Shoot,
However, that is not the funeral pyre. There was a tournament game where you basically played, and you got a character assigned to you. There were 30 tables, I believe. And you had to go through and basically try to get as much gold with your character as you could individually while also working with the party. And then at the end of it, basically, it kept getting harder and harder until somebody died, until there was only one player left at each table, and then moved on. It was fun. My problem was I played a rogue, and I was like, I'm going whole hog with this. I'm going to jump in and play a rogue. I walk into this room by myself. I'm scouting ahead, and there's a giant shelf with gold on it. And I'm like, this is trapped. But I want the gold. So I had a 10-foot pole, because nowadays in D&D, not so much, but in basic and first and second edition, you always had a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, that's what you put into the mouth of the green demon face.
Exactly. That's not your hand or your whole body.
Exactly.
It's only a 3-foot pole now. I don't know why.
Weirdest thing.
But so I reached out and I prodded the shelf with my 10-foot pole. And the next thing I know, the DM goes, roll a poison save. And in first edition, you had 3 saves, basically. You had a poison save, a death save, and a wand, spells, and rod save. And so I rolled the save, and the DM was kind. He kind of looked away real quick and goes, I didn't see it roll, so you can roll again. Rolled it again, got a 1. Out jumped a yellow mold. Now, let me tell you about first edition yellow molds. You have a 50% chance per contact that it's going to release spores. He had already rolled that ahead of time. If you fail the poison save, you are killed instantly. Your lungs filled with yellow mold growth, unless you make the saving throw. Even if you make the saving throw, you still have to have Cure Disease and Resurrection cast on you within 24 hours to be revived. Wow. First edition was... I have my old first edition monster manual here. I just pulled it up just to get it right. So I proceeded to die, and at this particular event, whenever someone died, they'd come by and ring a huge cowbell and sing na 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 hey 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 goodbye.
Okay.
And so I did my little arms up, and I walked away. The third person in the entire tavern kicked out of the game through death. And that is my
goodness! So it's not even that like you got to the end. You were one of the first.
And the worst part is some of the other people were like, "Don't touch that," and I'm like, "But it's gold. I'm a rogue. I'm going to touch it."
Yeah.
So. That was my, I don't have a name for him or anything, but that was my funeral pyre.
Okay, wow. So much there. That's interesting. That's I love the setup of like you have a convention where like you've got all these different tables, and then whoever gets the most gold is I love the idea of that. However, it does feel completely anathema to what is D&D nowadays. I feel
it is completely different. For example, when they ran the competitive tournament, the PvP tournament, they basically give you 2 million gold to buy whatever you wanted for your character. So, I basically got partnered up with my dad's friend from work. My dad was in the army, and one of his coworkers, well, a bunch of his coworkers were there that day. I got to play so many games that day because they all knew me. But one of my dad's coworkers teamed up with me. He goes, "Look, you be the bait. I'm going to be an invisible rogue with Ioun stones, and I'm going to backstab everybody who comes up to you." Well, that worked. I got like 3 or 4 people come up. I wasn't getting the kills, but we were splitting the money. So 3 or 4 people came up to me. And then finally, just one guy got through, and he didn't see him. And we're talking ridiculous first edition Magic items. 2 million gold is a lot. You can buy all kinds of stuff. So I got backstabbed and killed, and that was less glorious, I think. But I made $6. So I mean,
there you go. There you go.
It was all right.
All right. Do you recall what the name was of your character that died to the yellow mold?
No, I'm sure it was some particularly traditional AD&D name from the time, like Grask Thief Star or something.
Okay. All right. Well, let's raise a glass in memory of Grask Thief Star, as we are reminded that poison didn't used to deal damage over time. All right. So that'll do it for today. Jacob, once again, if you would like to tell our listeners anything that you want to plug, anywhere they can reach you, go ahead and do so.
Yeah, thanks. So once again, if you're interested in communicating with me as a teacher, you can go to mrcassins, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Again, on all the social media. Or if you're interested in looking up as a D&D player or RPG player, I play pretty much everything. You can look up Jacob the GM, Jacob the GM, at gmail.com. I'm on all the social media with that one. And if you are looking for someone to help with your writing or marketing or anything like that, look me up at jacob@pixelpopmarketing.com. And real quick, my buddy Alf is a game designer. Alf Siegert, he designed Illumination, Road to Canterbury, a few other games. I do a lot of editing and proofreading for him, so I just wanted to make sure I pointed out that I'm grateful that he has brought me in to help out with those games. So from earlier, I wanted to make sure I added that, and I forgot. So he'd kill me if I didn't remember, because I was like, "Is it okay if I mention you on this?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's great." And I'm like, "Okay," but then I forgot because
Sure. Well, I'll
so
try
anyway,
to
thanks.
I'll try to find some of his stuff and put those in the show notes as well.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jacob, for coming on the show. I had a great time. I hope you did as well.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, like I said, that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions, magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Reddit, we're on our Interparty Discord, we're on Twitter @InPartyConflict. Check those out for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. We don't have most of our Patreon anymore, but if you want to just give us $1 a month to help with hosting fees in the foreseeable future, there is a ton of content on there. For $1 single, you can get dozens of bonus episodes, hundreds of outtakes, tons and tons of stuff. So go check that out at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where you can watch us play video games.
There you go. Also head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict and tell us what were some of your favorite memories from the show. If you do so, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of the great people over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time...
Misery is alive!